Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of my brand new podcast, This Girl Shoots. I'm Brianna Lisa, a professional portrait photographer here in the Tampa Bay area, and we have 2 amazing guests. You might recognize Bryn from a couple episodes ago, but this is Bryn Rietz, and this is Spencer Cross, a improv teacher and a Christian musician. Okay, so let's get into it, guys.
He's the improv teacher. I'm the Christian musician.
Yes. Which differences do you guys think men and women should have to develop and maintain a healthy relationship? And if there are exceptions, what are the exceptions and why?
All right into it. So I used to believe that in order to get women to like you, you should kind of behave a little bit like women. You know, be nice, be empathetic and such. But that's not true at all. What you'll find as a man is, for some reason, women will stick around with aggressive and abusive guys that they find interesting, despite how badly they are treated. And that's not necessarily because they are bad guys and they like that they're bad. It's because of something else that comes with that, all right? Women like emotional variation. They like drama. They like to both have high highs and really low lows. And that's what those kind of men give them. There's a quote that I heard recently, once again, that you can do, and don't take it literally, but you can do anything to a woman except for bore her. And I think it's very unusual to have a man that is both a good person and an interesting man. Unfortunately, you usually get nice guys who are jolly boring, but they'll take care of her, or bad boys who will not take care of her, but they're very entertaining.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing for a man to do is to be the best of both worlds.
Yes, I totally agree. I'm kind of guilty of that too. I'm just like, yeah, I like the bad boys because like they keep me on my toes, I guess. That's, yeah. What do you think about that?
In terms of main differences, I resonate with Bryn's point, right? I think there's been some kind of, the first place my mind goes is this cliche perception of spirituality, right? Because we like to express everything in terms of synergy, like a melding between the two, like you brought up masculine and feminine energies. And ideally, everybody wants to tap into their inner zen and be able to sympathize with the other side. But when those lines blur, when you draw them straight down the middle, and it's hard to tell the difference between the two. And you don't have strong positions on either side. You got to look at the people that came before you. Because if there's a strong history of specific gender roles, and we found success associated with those roles and those tasks and this is what I do. As let's say as a man, let's get straight down to it. In a masculine role, right? What are your 2 primary goals? To protect and to provide. Mm-hmm. Right? That traces back thousands, millions of years. Hunters, gatherers, right? I will bring home the harvest. I will bring home the food. I will provide. I will make sure our young are tended to, not in the way that you express, right? But to provide and to protect. And the feminine aspect is more involved with this emotional complexity, right? The stay-at-home mom, I'll tend to the kids. I'll show them that love and affection that only a female is capable of showing. So really, I think the biggest difference that men and women, and masculine and feminine roles and energies, the biggest thing they need to do is really embrace their differences. Mm-hmm. Because we want to be too sympathetic, too peaceful, too zen, too ideally spiritual, that we forget who we are because we're too busy trying to see something from somebody else's perspective.
Exactly.
But know where you exist and know the lines and the gaps between those, because nothing makes sense when you try to fuse into one, right?
Yeah. And I'll say this as well, is because women are feminine, they naturally, I think it starts with the man. I think masculinity is a necessity and femininity is a blessing. And I'll tell you what that really means is it starts with the man. If the man starts to behave in a masculine way, the woman feels safe. Even if he's like a dangerous man, at least he can say no to other men if there's harm. If he can say no to a woman, he can definitely say no to a man. And that's where the safety aspect comes from that. It kind of seems paradoxical to have a guy that's aggressive and harming her and stuff. But anyway, I think of it like the man is the stem and the woman is the blossom. You got to have the stem in place. If there's no stem in place, that's what the woman starts to do. I noticed something when I did ballroom dancing that was very interesting. Now, ballroom dancing, you have these couples, and they both have different roles. The man is supposed to keep time, and he's supposed to lead. The woman is supposed to be the show. She's the one that wears the colorful dress. The man is often in black and white. Okay? And if the man was not structured, if he was not leading her through the dances, if he was not taking her away from other couples, avoiding the harm that they could have, not being a strong, firm presence, not keeping time, the woman would start to occupy that role. And when that happened, he didn't necessarily take the feminine role. He would just kind of sloppily follow along. And they'd both become resentful towards each other. And they were always arguing. That's what happened with many of the young and the new couples. And I see it as exactly the same. You got to have that stem in place. And if you're not that stem as a man, the woman's not going to blossom. She's going to have to be the stem. But that doesn't mean that you're going to take the feminine role. So everything just becomes out of order.
Exactly. I feel like these days, like there's like some type of weird like new world order going on. But specifically with genders, I feel like, especially in music videos, like in the music industry, I feel like, and the Barbie movie, the Barbie movie, I feel like was like kind of like an attack on like gender, because in the movie, apparently I didn't watch it, but I watched like a lot of clips and like reactions and stuff like that, like commentary on YouTube. And basically the men were acting like girls, and the girls weren't acting like guys, but they were trying to like demonize men and being like, well, there was a scene in that movie, in the Barbie movie, that all the guys like realized their masculine energy, and then they all like banded together to be like, you know, like these masculine men. And then all the girls in the movie are like, ugh, men ruin everything. You see, now it's a man's world now and stuff like that. And in the movie, all the girls like have all the high like jobs, and they're like doing everything, and all the men are just like laying on the beach like doing nothing. It's just like they portray that men are useless and men should be more feminine. And I feel like it's like that in the music industry too, where all the girls are like so masculine, especially in the rap industry with all the music videos. They're like holding up gang signs and stuff like that, which we're used to seeing like guys doing in music videos. And yeah, I feel like that's literally the trick of the devil.
So
like,
I wanna extend a little bit. So you had the metaphor of the stem and the girl being allowed to blossom, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's the thing. The greatest way and the quickest way and the most effective way to weaken a population is to demasculize it.
Yes,
right. So
I agree with that.
if you remove the stem from society, how can society be allowed to blossom?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't remove that strong masculine foundation and really expect society to thrive, for society to prosper. Now, that's not to say, and that's not necessarily trying to highlight any weaknesses or insignificancies in the other side. That's saying you need balance. You need both roles to exist. But both roles ideally need to exist at 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you start to see a percentage decrease in either side, then really you're not at your most optimal and ideal level, right? And there's a lot of crossover. And I didn't see the Barbie movie personally, but heard a couple things. Never really looked into it too much, but I believe everything you're saying, even if I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. And some girls were like, well, I broke up with my boyfriend because he didn't wear pink to the movies. I'm just like, it's not that serious.
What you'll find in societies that are broken down is that you will not get people playing the jobs, playing the roles that are typically more like entertainment type roles. So, for example, Zimbabwe. People there, if you want to find a job as a man, you're not going to find a job being a musician. You're going to find a job being a farmer or a mechanic or a business owner, someone that builds society. Right. And that's because those roles, those masculine roles, are things that they need there. It's out of necessity. So that's why I say masculinity is a necessity.
Exactly.
Once you have a society that thrives to a degree, then you can start to have people that can branch out and do jobs that are not necessity, things like being a musician, being an improv instructor, being et cetera, et cetera. So those things are sort of the blossom, the blessing that you get, the cool, fun jobs that you get, by extension, the artistic ones.
Right. Okay, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about improv comedy. So what is improv comedy specifically, and how do you teach your clients, and like how does it work like for you?
Improv is an anomaly because, okay, so improv at its core is just improvised comedic scenes that are inspired by audience suggestions that oftentimes take place in much smaller venues than your standard stand-up comedy, your stand-up comedy set. That's improv at its core. There's not a lot of examples that exist of it, right? Most of the time when you go to an improv class, you find 1 or 2 people that decided to hold a class, and there's like 15 or less people that gather for a couple hours every week and run through these like yes and exercises. So that's the thing. When there's not too many voices and there's not too many minds in a certain area, that concept doesn't really get much chance and time to evolve, right? If everybody's looking into a certain problem, if there's millions of great minds dedicated toward making sure that a certain concept or a certain ideology is at its most prime and optimal level, you're going to find some advancement, right? But nobody does improv, so you don't find a lot of hard and fast methodologies. But when it comes to how I like to teach, the one thing that I introduce is improv is not only what I described in its broad and general definition, but it is also the ability to exist in the moment. Right? Because it's like, all right, let's have a conversation. Let's both feel confident, no matter what we say, from start to finish. Mm-hmm. Now do that. 3 people on a stage, you're performing in front of 50 people, and now you're farmers in Alaska. Do it for 3 minutes, go. And it's like, all right, there needs to be a certain amount of confidence that exists with the ability to do that, right? Exactly. So you do that, and the one thing that improv does is it removes you from your mind. It allows you to be present in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. It allows you to be aware of everything that exists around you, because in improv, nothing exists around you, but everything does at the same time, because you're on a stage, but you're also somewhere else. You're in a far removed location, acting as another character, right? So you're creating in the moment. So you're not allowed to be in the past. You're not allowed to be in the future. You have to be exactly strictly in the moment. So the one tenet that I teach, regardless of whatever else you've heard about improv, because trust me, none of it really matters at the end of the day. The only thing that matters is your ability to be confident in what it is that you're doing and comfortable with the words that you're saying. And expressing that through improv comedy, and it's a good outlet for that. So that's my first and foremost, before I get into anything improv related, is you need confidence to do this. If you're not being taught confidence and you're not feeling more confident gradually every time you do it, you're not doing it right, executing it properly.
Yeah. Sure. So I have a question, actually. When interacting with, because I think you've got some, for lack of a better word, good game with females. How do you feel that improv actually, does it improve your skills in regards to dating as a man, interacting with women? And how do you feel that it does so, if it does?
So it does. There are certain things that are universal. And that's the thing about improv, is it's weird because you can draw a big circle and then there are a million different arrows that can stem from it. Right. And there's a lot of areas that it improves, and dating is one of them. Like, it's not, your stop doesn't end. Your success doesn't end when you start dating somebody and you forget everything along the way. Right. Exactly. That confidence does translate in terms of dating life, because that's the thing. The ability to express oneself completely and honestly. And you'll find that the more that your internal confidence increases, the less you start to care about external opinion. Right, because you've got this solid self-image form internally, and that can't really be compromised due to somebody saying, "Hey, I think you're this," other than what you perceive yourself to be. Sure. So, with that increase in self-image and that increase in confidence, as you discover in improv, that does help. That does help the dating scene too, right? Like, you need that ability to seamlessly, express what you want to say in the moment, and that definitely translates.
Do you think that being able to think on your feet and doing improv, I think that it also helps you to sense the emotions of a situation and be able to change it up. So, like, for example, if you're with a woman and you are being really nice to her, and then you tease her a little bit because you feel that it starts to get a little bit bland, and then you feel that, oh, maybe you went too far, and then you can kind of sense that, and then you change directions and you be a little nice again. Do you feel like it gives you that emotional sensitivity, or do you think that's just something that you naturally get?
That's a good question.
No, it's a good question. And it's hard for me to gauge, because the thing about it is, I feel like I personally have a good sense of somebody's emotional signature. Like, I think that's why I gravitate toward improv so much, right? Because there is an emotional complex associated with it being on stage, right? Yeah. Expressing yourselves in those moments. It's not just it's not one emotion the whole entire way throughout, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's one reason why I'm attracted to it. For me, it's always resonated with what I'm attracted to naturally. But to imagine myself in a position where I didn't have quite as good of a read as I usually do in terms of emotional signatures, would it still help? Yeah, it does. I think that, investing yourself in those scenes, it translates off stage too, right? Yeah. It's like, you know how to navigate something, because especially if you're performing with somebody that you don't know, if it gets weird, how do you recover? How do you prevent it from getting to a place where both parties aren't the most comfortable, right? Because chances are you're doing it with somebody new every time. Yeah. So that ability to interact with each other in that scene does allow you to kind of know the lines and the boundaries that ebb and flow and not cross either one.
Yeah. Okay. Probably also interacting with the audience, understanding their reactions does help as well. Getting used to that.
Yeah, an improviser's biggest fear is the audience, because improv is weird. A lot of people will tell you what you can't do with it before they can express too many good ideas on what you can do with it. There's this weird phrase that shouldn't exist called going blue.
Going blue?
Yeah, right. And it refers to anybody's perception of what is unacceptable in front of an audience. Like, if there's a 1% chance that this won't resonate with somebody in the audience, we're going to try to stray away from talking about it. So that acts as a lot of things that are generally expressed in stand-up comedy, and that's why stand-up is predominantly 98% of the comedy market. The entertainment value that you find from it, improv is very, very niche, right? Not a lot of people do it because they're thinking about ways that it can go wrong before it goes right.
Yeah.
I used to do improv classes, but not necessarily for comedy, but for acting. I've always wanted to be an actress. That was my childhood dream. But no, I still want to get into it, but I don't really feel like I'm that good at improv anymore, at least.
And that's the thing, too. A lot of people say they get rusty, or it's been a while, or they've never done it before.
It's a skill that you have to keep up. You can't just do it once and then expect to be still good at it 10 years down the road and you don't practice it ever again.
Crazy enough you can, though. Because if I picked up a baseball bat for the first time when I was 4 and I was hitting dingers all the way throughout my adolescence, and I eventually ended up at in a major sports league in the MLB. Okay. If I did that, not that I'm going to do that. I don't play sports. Okay. But if you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference between somebody that's invested a lot of time in something like a physical sport, but it's hard to measure that. There's no real yardstick on improv. Somebody can get on stage, have a funny scene, and they can convince you if they've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
Or somebody that's been doing it for if they've come to 5 classes, but damn. Right? You would think they're doing it a lot longer than they are. And I think that's usually the case. It's really ambiguous. You can't really get a measure on how long somebody's been doing it. So that whole rusty concept is kind of illusory.
Now, I've seen you perform many times, and I've performed with you a little bit. One thing that I think that you're very good at, and partially means, you don't necessarily just have to practice all the time, is that you take simple things and you run with them and you do things that are very funny. And that's just something that I've noticed. So it doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to have all this crazy practice. You just have to deliver it the correct way. And I think that's something you're very good at, is you're very much like a calm, cool cat, and you're just funny because you just state the obvious and you do it in the correct way.
Have either of you guys really known somebody genuinely really funny that you became friends with them and they're easily top 3, top 5 funniest people you know, if not the funniest? And, somebody along the way would say, man, you should do this stuff in front of people.
Probably
and they just
Jay.
never did. And they
Jay.
just never.
Jay?
It's Jay for me.
I don't know enough about Jay, so.
Let's say it is.
But he seems like that kind of guy.
Let's say Jay is 10 out of 10 in terms of humor, right? Let's say he's one of the funniest guys on the planet. But if you never attempt something like improv, or if you never attempt an art like that on stage, nobody would ever know. But there are people that have that innate ability to just get on stage, and after they do it once or twice and they climb that 100-foot wall of doing an improv scene, then they just jump right over it like it was nothing.
For sure.
Right. Okay, guys, I won't have enough time to talk about Andrew Tate.
Yeah,
so I just want to get right into it.
Let's do it.
What is your guys' favorite topics about Andrew Tate's teachings and why?
Favorite topics? Well, I know a lot about him, so I don't know if I could necessarily narrow it down to a specific topic. But what is very, very helpful, something that I've been thinking about recently, is that he talks about being, and this is my words, not his, but it's just the concept that I like, being more of a results-driven person than a time or just like many people when they do work because they paid hourly, they work in a way that's, okay, I'm just going to spend this amount of time doing something and supposedly it's productive. The way Andrew Tate behaves, the way he communicates for men to be is to do things despite emotions, do things without sleep, do things in a way that brings results and to be completely results orientated. That's like his entire focus. He's 100% results orientated. When he had his webcam business, he said sometimes he'd just wake up at 3 a.m. and he'd say, I want to make money. And then he'd get the girls on the webcams and such. So that's what I find very helpful about him. The world does not care about you and the results that you bring. If you want to bring yourself attention, if you want to bring yourself money, you got to bring those results. It doesn't matter if you're tired. It doesn't matter if you're even a little bit unhealthy while doing it, although it's good to maintain good health.
Right.
So
what do you think about that?
I mean, okay. If we trace back a couple questions ago and we were talking about, I brought up the concept of these ratios, right? And how there's this blurry line in the middle between, let's say, masculine and feminine, and everybody's trying to have that empathetic see from the other side, and there's a lot of crossover and a lot of transition, and the roles are compromised, right? So the STEM society's not really allowed to blossom. So the one question I ask is, does a figure like Andrew Tate bring you closer to optimal ratios? Does his word, if it carries, what does it carry with it, and does it allow you to bring yourself back to that point? If I were to do a honest evaluation on the content I have heard from him, I would say yes. I would say I have not drawn a lot of negative meaning. Like, well, okay, how do I feel after I listen to Andrew Tate talk for 30 minutes? I feel like I want to accomplish something. I feel a great sense of ambition. I feel a sense of responsibility, dedication, obligation. Do any of those things hinder myself or, by extension, hinder the community or society around me as a result? No. If everybody were to partake in his general lessons and spend some time to absorb some of his material, I don't see a lot of negative detriment because of that. Now, obviously, people will point to the giant headline that says that he did X, Y, or Z. Yeah. And that's a different it's the same conversation, trust me. And there are some quick thoughts on that to run by, but to avoid eating up too much time. If you remove that from the equation and he was sitting across the table from you and millions of people didn't know who he was, but you heard him listen, you would agree with him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm probably going to get hate from other girls, but it's fine.
But it's just that magnetism of those headlines. It's the magnetism, the push and pull, the allure of that sparkling headline that says, oh, this is a bad guy, I don't like him because it makes you good. And unfortunately, that's the trap a lot of people fall under. They look at it through that mainstream, the legacy media lens.
Right, and I feel like the tone of voice like he was using was like kind of aggressive to some people's ears, so they automatically think like just disregard what they actually say and just, oh, this is an aggressive guy that just hates women. He's
clever though.
Whatever. Yeah,
he's clever. Smart. No, he does that specifically. He knows that he's abrasive. If you watch his Cheyenne Reynolds interview, the way he talks is actually to win the debate. What he does is he says things in a way that creates an emotion in the other person. And once they start reacting to him emotionally, then they are no longer in logic, and then he can easily win the debate or conversation.
Right, it's a strategy.
So he uses different methods. He's extremely, extremely good with his soft skills. Him and Tristan as well. If you watch, like I watched through Survivor, when Tristan did maybe it's not called Survivor, but it's some island TV show, English island TV show that he did, where you're supposed to like manipulate people and get jewels and stuff. He was extremely clever and extremely manipulative in the way that he behaved in regards to people.
I bet. I was going to say Naked and Afraid, but I know that's
very
not the
clever. They're very clever people. They understand power dynamics. Tristan and Andrew understand power dynamics to an amazing degree.
Right. But based on everything that he has done, like specifically, like, like the arrest and the, like the cam girl stuff and the apparent abuse of like his ex-girlfriend, like those tapes a long time ago. Apparently they're fake, but I'm not sure if they're fake.
I think the one that you might be referencing, the one with the belt, I think that's absolutely fake. No, I think that, not necessarily fake. I don't think that was abuse. I think that was just them doing what they like to do. But you might be curious on my take on Andrew Tate because I used to like him.
Yeah.
I don't. I like him, but I do think that, and I don't know, I really hope I'm wrong, but I think that he's probably guilty of what they say he's guilty of. What he will say that he's guilty of is he says that he manipulated women into giving him money from their TikTok videos. That is not what he is supposedly guilty of.
Right.
What they think that he is guilty of is using the lover boy method to separate women from their social circles, bring them into Romania with promises of love and marriage, and then figuring out ways to use them to get them to do webcam and use manipulation to continue doing that. Now, Andrew Tate used to teach a course called his PhD course, and he's since removed it, I believe. It stands for Pimping Hoes Degree. And
I'm not surprised.
I knew of Andrew Tate before he was famous, and one of my original criticisms was that he was a pimp sympathetic. Now, there's been some Telegram messages that are leaked. I don't know if they're true. I think they might be because it seems consistent with his character based on what he taught in this PhD course. But where he talked about how to separate a girl from her family, he talked about this one particular woman that he made up a lie saying that he was told that she used to work in a sex club, and then have her try to defend herself and qualify herself to him, and then afterwards, because she would become desperate, and he would move her to his place and only feed her, not give her anything else. He would say, he would use that desperation from her to make her agree to never leave anywhere without him. Therefore, separating her, and then he would use his, I don't like using this word, bottom, B-I-T-C-H, because I don't like that kind of language. He would use Georgiana to bring up webcam to the woman. And he said he would never bring up webcam before sleeping with the woman, because then she would be more emotionally invested in him. He would sleep with her, and then he would have his bottom be convince her or try to bring up the idea of webcam. And then, because women trust women, and then he would cleverly pull them eventually into breaking their own morals and agreeing to do webcam for him.
Oh, dang. That's crazy.
That is a classic pimp psychology that he used. Very clever, and I do think he is guilty of that, but I don't know. I hope he's not. I really do, because I do like him, and he says some very wise things, and he has done an overall good for masculinity, but I do think he has taken advantage of both men and women.
I believe so too. What do you think about that, really quick?
I think that it's unfortunate that, so getting into the semantics of the process that you had described that is aforementioned, I think it's unfortunate that there's no alternative term or phrase other than pimp, and there's no positive light or context in which that word exists, right? So to associate it, that just claws away at the moral fiber of Andrew Tate as a person, right? It's hard to justify that or sympathize or empathize with that in any way, because it's like you got to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself if you would do the same thing or if you would condone other people doing the same thing, and the first answer that comes to mind is no, right? So then you find yourself at contest, you find yourself at odds, because now you need to balance this figure of present and compare it with the mistakes of the past, and how does it mesh? How does it meld, right? And I still think overall the message is a net positive. The influence is a net positive. The sphere of influence is a net positive. So let's look at the net negatives and start to trim away at those before we come at those that naturally are doing more positive things for society present day.
I don't think that crimes are irrelevant, but I think I can agree that he's probably a net positive for the world as far as his ideas.
Great thoughts, you guys. That was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you for having me.
What he said.
Of course.
Great conversation.
Make sure you follow Bryn and Spencer on IG. Go ahead and shout your IGs out.
Bryn _Rietz, BRYN_RIETZ.
Spencer X Cross for my personal, but to follow my improv Instagram and to get all the updates on classes I do teach, Spencer Cross Improv on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, let me do my music as well. My music is bryn.rietz.vision.music. So,
yes, make sure you listen to Bryn's music. He's a talented musician. And if you ever need improv classes, go ahead and go right to Spencer Cross. He knows what he's doing. Once again, I'm Brianna Lisa, your host. And make sure you check out my new website, briannalisaphotography.mypixieset.com. See you next Sunday.